When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Have we found a new European contender? Maybe. Just not the one you might think. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Interpro Show, your home for all things Irish rugby across the professional and amateur men's and women's game. I am joined by a very happy Adam,
Yes, you're right.
pretty happy David, and a dejected Ben, and myself as well, to discuss an opening weekend of mixed proportions, and that is going to be the theme across this week's show. Adam, you did the EuroC podcast with you on this channel. Well, if you're on YouTube on this channel, if not, go subscribe if you're listening on audio. Your thoughts on the opening weekend of, I believe we're not supposed to call it Europe anymore. It's EPCR action. So I would just forget what the E means in that. But your thoughts on the opening round of EPCR action?
The Euro African the Cup. I don't know. It's a way that I can try and construct it together. But yeah, it was a pretty. It was there was some really good games in this. Some really good games in this weekend. Bordeaux Bulls being a highlight for me was absolutely an incredible watch. But yeah, me and Hugh dive into the United Rugby side of things in the Champions Cup over on, well, in the Global Gainline channel or on our Spotify, which would be under the United Rugby Rewind.
It's always a very good listen. I'm not just saying that because I used to be on it, but because Adam is on it. Of course, obviously the reason. David, probably the first bit of news to get into, and we don't do a lot of news, but it was probably a good time to start. Women's Six Nations fixtures have been announced, and Ireland, like we've asked and like we had suggested because it had been rumoured, are heading to Belfast as well as Dublin and also to Galway for the first time in 20 years. And it's exactly what we want to see, isn't it? Like they're going around the country, they're spreading the game, they're working off that World Cup fever. Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, it's been a long running frustration. Obviously, a new sponsorship deal was signed there with Aviva, I think so. The men's games are going to stay in that stadium for the foreseeable, which is a source of frustration for a variety of reasons. So to see the women's team do this is it's fantastic. I like it'll be great. Um, Obviously for Galway, Connacht now, and by that time we'll have completed and opened the full Dexcom. They're up to just over 12,000. Great number to be able to get into a stadium in Galway. And then of course Ravenhill up in Belfast, Amphitheatre Stadium as it is. No, I think it's brilliant. Like I already have my tickets for Scotland. We were talking earlier. I think if I can, I'll make the jaunt up to Belfast as well. But I think it's a great reward for the sport all around the country. And there's a lot of entrenched biases around the men's game that don't necessarily bleed over into the women's game. So it's really cool to be able to see the game go on the road like that. It's I think it's great for all the supporters in Galway and Belfast. Obviously, as Cork tends to get a lot of the love in the under 20s to have international rugby over there. So I think it's fantastic, and yeah, I'm I wouldn't be I'd be looking for sellouts, and I'll hope to be there for two if not three of them myself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, on that, like it would be great if we do get to see Cork added back in next year, maybe Limerick the year after, have the occasional Aviva Stadium game. You don't want to do that every year. It'll lose the mystique if you don't have the attendance, but RDS and just always feel like it's moving around and it's not in one place. It's probably the one frustration of the under 20s. Always in Athlone, then always in Donnybrook, then always in Cork. So it is good to move it around. Speaking of Cork, we'll get onto that at the end of the show, Ben, with Munster Gloucester. But the one bit of good news out of Munster this week and out of today is that Craig Casey has signed a contract for another 2 years and probably the most liked rugby man in Limerick currently. I was going to say man, and then I realized there is kind of the hurlers that I can't really say that.
He's probably up there at this point. No, look, I mean, richly deserved. Don't think there's a single person in Limerick, in Munster or in Ireland who can say Craig doesn't deserve to get a long-term contract. Captain Munster, should be their full-time captain, in my opinion, when it runs out next season. Has captained Ireland. What more do you want? I mean, we say for ages Limerick doesn't have enough representation in this Munster team. It's a common complaint around the city. We now have our 9 for the next 2 years plus. Coming from Limerick City, an Artscoil Reach boy, get him captain, get him properly into the Irish setup for the games that Gibson Park can't do. Let's keep going. Excellent news. I needed something good this week.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been a mixed week of European results for the provinces. Munster no different. We will talk about them at the end. But Adam, we're going to start with you. And I would, if we were the editing type of podcast, we just pull up the Tommy Bow meme and go 61-7 win. But a 61-7 win over. Don't
Oh,
you dare.
don't do
Don't
that,
you
Ben.
dare, Ben. I'm gonna kick this
No.
man out of this show
I
very
have to
quickly.
deal with students doing that all the
Don't even
time.
say it. Don't even
I
say it.
teach
Right.
I teach
Don't say
maths.
what?
We're just gonna calm down. For anyone on audio, just don't even bother tuning in on video because of that. But Adam, I'm just gonna ask you, a huge win over Racing, a phenomenal win, a statement win, exactly what Ulster wanted.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have expected. I was expecting a win because I said last week, we have some famous wins against French teams in Ravenhill, and I feel like for me watching it, it was the perfect blend of how we can sorry, project. It was a perfect blend of how we need to play. And, you could say that Racing brought out a C team. You could say any excuse under the sun for Racing. However, at the end of the day, when you see a result like 61-7, most of the people stood up and took notice. We were playing really, really exciting rugby as well. Bryn Ward was toppling boys over, as well as his brother Zach. You had Jacob Stockdale playing with a smile on his face. Jack Murphy was a absolute commander in that back line, and he's only 21 years of age, and he's already looking like he's settled. Well, of course he's settled in completely. He's our 10, but he's looking like he's 10 years his elder, with how he commanded around that back line. I felt like the forward pack did exceptionally well as well. We say we have a second row crisis, and then we have up steps Joe Hopes and Charlie Irvine, and also Harry Sheridan, who I have to say is having a great season so far as well. But yeah, there was not a player that I thought played badly. Everyone just clicked, and it clicked so beautifully well to make this really good scoreline.
Yeah, it was. And it was just what kind of stood out to me again, and I was watching this, and yes, I did turn it over at the end to go catch the Late Late Toy Show. And for anyone who's not in Ireland, I swear that's a normal thing for a 24-year-old to say. Um, but the second half, again, like an absolute blitzing, and the cliche is always something along the lines of the riot act or the coach went in and told them what they were doing wrong or whatever. Yeah, Ulster were a bit porous in the first half defensively. But just how they've managed to just have these huge second half 2 weeks in a row, kind of seen it against the Sharks when they were down there, against the Bulls. You remember those scores either side of half time. I think they had that game out of sight with 20 minutes to go. That is becoming a real strength. Now, if you look at the stats, Ulster are leading so many of them, or they're up near the top in so many of them, it's almost a misnomer. But the fact that they are having these purple patches in games, I think is really important because if you look at each province, are they all having consistent purple patches in matches as much as Ulster? I don't think you can say so. You know, like Munster have had like grinding results out. Leinster have had a just kind of dominant wins. You know, stuff like that. Connacht's wins have mainly been dominant wins as well, with Benetton and Sharks in particular. So it's a point of difference now at the
It
moment.
it's so nice because you on one hand I'd say like it's a game of halves, and then I look at the loose head props. Sam Crane had such a good game defensively in the first half. I think he made something like 9 tackles in the first half. He was really, really good in the first half. Then we had our debuting Wallaby Angus Bell, and he was running around. He was like playing the game that we want Angus Bell to play, and I'm like, it's just when you have dreams, and last year it was so dreadful, and you're like, I really want Ulster to play good again. This is what it was. You had Johnny Sexton and Andy Farrell in the crowd. You had Jake Flannery's.
Can I butt in there for a split second? It
Yeah,
is believed that that is Andy Farrell's second appearance in Ravenhill, or at
well,
least second one that he was spotted on camera
yeah, it was
in five
the
years.
It was the first, I think it's the first time Johnny's been in Belfast, to be honest with you. I don't remember the last time he actually played at
I'm sure
Ravenhill.
he's played up there,
Yeah,
surely.
I just remember my season ticket always going like, oh, it's Copperth again, or it's Ian Madigan. Yay. Anyway, um, but I do feel like when you see those players playing and you see like the likes of Jake Flannery scoring a try in Europe, and I'm like, this is Ulster rugby at the minute. We're playing such nice flowing rugby. And Dave McCann getting man of the match was a testament to that as well. He's a player that's going under the wings of Irish rugby at the minute. He can crop up in Ireland camps all he wants at the minute. But yeah, I just thought it was
He's
such
been
a
excellent. And like
he's
the
been
back row
so good.
balance and everything, isn't it? Like it's
Oh yeah,
him, it's Bryn Ward, it's Augustus, it's Timoney. Timoney doesn't look like he's at his best, but then you look at his stats, he's like top tackle counter, he's top carry count
yeah.
another week. Like he's still quietly efficient. But what's really standing out, and we kind of discussed it last week, is just like who's stepping up for Ulster and the age profile. And I know the man that we're going to highlight is a little bit older, but he's so new to the scene. That's Zach Ward. Like top defenders beaten, top of meters made, scored 2 tries. The second one was like something straight out of sevens, a small gap in midfield, and just no one there to catch him at all. And David, I'll bring you in here because like Zach Ward kind of epitomized this Ulster performance. Like they weren't, not to say he wasn't great in the first half, he was pretty good in the first half. They weren't at their best, but when they clicked into gear, they looked unstoppable, and he looked unstoppable. He's such a tough man to bring down.
He's a phenomenally physical winger, and I will touch on him after I defended the honour of Johnny Sexton, who played in Belfast in his final season with Leinster. He never
Interesting.
stopped putting in the hard yards, so came off the bench. I think it was his
I
first match
oh,
back in a while.
I was gonna
He
say that
played,
I was
yeah,
I wasn't there.
yeah. He played about 15 minutes, but he was there. That's the important bit. No, Zach Ward was brilliant. Like he's been an excellent winger for a while. For Ulster. Not always like 100% showed everything we know him to be capable of. He's a very physical winger, which certainly in Farrell's Ireland goes a long way. But it's just his work rate is phenomenal. Anyone like you mentioned earlier that Ulster were having these great second halves, and I think it stands out so much because so many teams struggle. Like it can be such a hard thing to keep up for a second half, either because you're behind or because you're ahead. Like it can affect you in both directions. Um, Ulster don't seem to be having that problem this season, which is a huge boon. And Zach Ward, I think, particularly, I'm pretty sure if I'm remembering correctly, the very final score of the game was a centre break. It was some quick passing, and then he just slips through a gap, and suddenly he's sprinting up the middle of the pitch past bewildered-looking Racing defenders, to dot down for Ulster's final score. Like to be still doing that with 81 minutes on the clock, like that epitomizes the kind of work rate that this guy has. And it's exactly what you want to see. And you add into that he's physical, he's tenacious, like he has that kind of edge to him. It's not too similar to the way Werner Koch plays the game, with a kind of a fighting aspect to a winger, which is kind
Great,
of what
great
you
guy
need
to
when
learn off because they
yeah,
are
it's a
so
fun
similar in that way. And like two sevens players originally as well.
Yeah, and like Werner has the same kind of obviously he's a slightly bit more manic than Zach Ward, but it's the same kind of 100% energy for 100% of the match, which is exactly what you want from the players who are on the wingers who are on the pitch for the full game. You want those players to be able to do that the whole way through. And Zach Ward is very clearly one of those players who can do that and who at 81 minutes is still looking for work enough to be able to create the kind of try he did. So yeah, I think it was a really, really standout performance from him. It was really impressive.
Yeah, it was. And like I've interviewed Zach Ward in the past. I would have watched him last year. Weirdly, I was at Ulster Bordeaux last year. I don't know if this came up. Myself and Ben were both there on our trip to France, and like he does look like a very rounded player for someone who's so new to this kind of the pro rugby scene, having come up as a back row at Ballynahinch as well, and which always just I'm like so many guys like they have the athletic traits. They're not necessarily like have everything, but like he is big and strong. He's good in contact. He's good defender. He's good with ball in hand. Can get offloads away, run smart lines. The only thing he probably doesn't have is a kicking game, but like he did also come through as a back row. You're not going to expect that straight away. That could be a reason that Andy Farrell may not look at him because Andy Farrell likes wingers to kick the ball a lot. But at the same time, that doesn't mean he can't be a weapon for Ulster. We don't see Rob Balogun kick that often, and he's a weapon for Ulster. And it's part of this whole thing that Ulster's depth is in some positions really, really good. And providing they don't lose any more players at like second row, for example, or maybe at halfback, they should be contenders. And Adam, it's probably a little bit soon to say the C word, and I do notice this. The 9th of December, it's also still very soon to say the C word. But Ulster kind of look like contenders now. Like this was a game where it's like,
Yeah.
right, this was not full strength. And we did have Angus Bell on the bench. And we weren't perfect for some of the game. But we just put 61 points on a team that you don't put 61 points on.
Yeah, and I don't want to be called a chancer if we were saying the C words by the end of by when we were in Bilbao. But we did go out and make a statement. I think we were one of those teams to really show that we're taking this seriously. And which is good because some of the teams don't take it seriously. You see the likes of Racing that sent a C team out. I think it was something that we noticed in Europe in general. Me and Hugh discussed this as well on the United Rugby Rewind about how some of the teams are looking for a one win and done. Because that's how you can qualify for this for these European competitions. But Ulster, we want that top seed. We want the home advantage all the way through, right the way up to Bilbao, and we're going to be a bit confused with the sun with the like red skin all over us. And it's not going to be because we're painted red. That's going to be the sweat beating down on us. But I feel like for an Ulster fan, and I watched the TikTok, it was such a stupid one. I was at an ABBA tribute night and I saw a TikTok of Ulster scoring, like Ulster getting beat last season, and then now they're winning, and I'm like, yeah, we could do this. And whilst Chiquitita was playing in the background, and my boss was like, "Are you okay, Adam?" And I was like, "I'm just living in the moment, lad."
Oh Lord, I don't know where to start. As often is the case with Adam's little soliloquies, I don't know where to start with that one. Well, like I was just saying, are they contenders? And then it goes from we are going to be in Bilbao getting sunburnt, and here's also an ABBA story. Like, fair
Yeah,
enough. At least we know what your Instagram reel music has to be if Ulster
if
win
we
the
do it.
Challenge Cup.
Oh,
It
gimme,
has
gimme,
to be.
gimme.
It has to be something from ABBA. But no, look, an unbelievable performance, and like not too many Irish podcasts are going to start with Ulster this week either. So good to get them up on and get the show on a fast start. And another team after a fast start, 5 points from five to kickstart is Leinster. They squashed Harlequins 45-28 in another weird game. And I do want to just like I say weird game a lot. I'm starting to think maybe I just don't know ball. And that's not for the YouTube comments to come at me. But this one, David, you were there. It did kind of feel weird because I felt like Leinster are always going to win this game. But also, Quins are within like 3 points at one stage with 20 minutes to go. But also, of course, Leinster are going to win this game. It was strange, wasn't it?
Yeah, it did feel odd. It wasn't even when we were only 3 points ahead, it never felt. I don't know. I've been at games where you can kind of feel it slipping. It didn't feel like this was slipping. It more felt like I don't know. It just feels like Leinster make a lot of mistakes that are uncharacteristic. That even the act of conceding 28 points and we said off air that like this the Harlequins team weren't bad and they weren't there's so many. I'm always loath to dismiss a team who score because I've watched lots of really bad games of rugby, where neither team scores very much. Like scoring a try still takes a certain amount of effort. They still had enough. Um, Shape and intent to actually pull it off. So, credit has to go to Harlequins, and they'll be happy to have gotten out of there with 1 point where they might not have expected to. But I think it really begs questions from Leinster where this is a game where they would have expected to go out, they would have been looking to go out and put a real stamp on it. They're finally getting most of the main squad back together. This is Joe McCarthy's first game back. There was shape coming back to the team. And while they did get the result, and they're, at the end of the day, you score more than 40 points, you get five points out of a match. There's not really much more we're asking from teams in Europe. It didn't feel like, put it another way, if Leinster weren't playing Harlequins, if they were playing against Bath, you don't feel like they would have won. And that's kind of where we're at now. Because unfortunately for Leinster, they play every game in Europe basically imagining if this was a final, would we win it? Because that's the one thing that's eluded them in the last few years. And you have to look at that game and go, no, probably not. So, I think the upside to it is they got the 5 points, bonus point try, decent scoreline. That's what we needed. That's what we got. Jerry Thornley was saying on off the ball that this team is so fractured. This is really the start of their season. We've said that a few times. You can only say that so many times before they have to really start getting it going. I think next week will be a really big test, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, no, it just felt
Can
like
I can
an
I
odd
ask you
game.
about that, David? Because like you've said this a lot as well. It's like, look, eventually you have to draw the line. And as
Yeah.
much as I think even last year potentially it could have even been said as well, it's like, oh sure, Leinster season only starts now in like Christmas time and but as you said, it does kind of happen because like their next game now is against Leicester in Welford Road, which is always a tough trip. We still would probably all pick Leinster to win, but still a tough trip. But if they don't get a run of momentum here, you go into that post Six Nations window with having no momentum all season. Like that's the thing. Like so that's probably part of it, isn't it? Like these good but not great performances. You want to get one under your belt. Or like, right, that was brilliant. That was fantastic. Now we roll on, and that's probably your biggest fear at the moment, I assume.
Yeah, that basically is it, is that you could find it because of the calendar is weird. Like it's so packed and so fractured that it's you don't get that many opportunities to build consistent form where the players are all going to be in there. They'll come into Christmas, obviously, IRFU protocols will come into effect. Some people will have to be rested. There'll have to be some amount of rotation. Six Nations are not that far away, and then you're back into Europe. Like it's going all the time, and so there's a lot of chopping and changing. It used to be a big strength of Leinster's that it didn't really matter who they put out; they could play the system. Obviously, budgetary concerns have changed, and the way we're handling things is changing, so that comes into effect too. But yeah, it becomes an issue where if you limp through most of the season, where do you build that momentum? And it really caused me concern last week because Leinster came so it's weird to say they came much closer to losing to the Dragons than they did to Harlequins. And I don't want to say I don't want to be trite, but that can be all fun and games if that's the only game you lose in a season. You can go, ah, God, they went and got a load of wins. But remember, they lost to the Dragons. I was looking at it going, you can't afford to lose here. You're only sixth in the URC. There's no the problem with such a meek start to the season is you leave yourself no room for mistakes from here on out. Like, when Leinster lost the two away games against South Africa and the game against Munster in the Croke Park, and in my head I thought, well, that's it. You can't really lose anymore now. You have to win from here. Because of the compressed nature of the European season, there isn't that much latitude there if you want to get your home run. As we said for Ulster, you can win one game and not that Ulster win, sorry, the other teams in the Challenge Cup would have the attitude that you could win one game and still qualify for the knockouts. But it's always been Leinster's stated goal to have that whole home run. Um, it's up for debate whether or not that's what's best for them. Hard yards on the road can be good for a team too, but yeah, I would be concerned that the further into the season you go using that excuse of this is very fractured, yada yada yada, that starts to morph from this is a fractured start to the season to this is just a fractured season and it's a dip. And I have felt in the last few weeks that this has been a dip season for, oh no, I'm going on for a minute here, sorry, but I have felt for a few weeks now that this has been a dip season for Leinster. And the only thing that not the only thing that bothers me, it's never fun when it happens, but the thing that bothers me about that is I don't really see why. The only thing I can point to is the Lions tour, the high number of players who went on that, the high number of, I think it was 24 Leinster players who were involved in the November series. So that's the only thing I point to. But other than that, I was like, these are the same players with the same coaching staff who won the URC last season. What's the story? And I
Yeah.
think with Jacques Nienaber, I give him a lot of latitude. I think he's a very good coach. But I had people say, he's been saying, oh, it takes this many weeks to bed in the defensive system. Like, yeah, but he had the entire last season. Like, it should be bedded in by now. These guys shouldn't have to figure it out anymore. They should know how to do it. And I think it's the big worry for me is that we've gone from a team who were nigh on impossible to score against, conceded almost no points, to a team who lets it in with ease. And I just would have the concern that on the flip side, unlike say under Stuart Lancaster, we don't then have the firepower to balance that out. So yeah, look, it's not the most down I felt after a win, but it was definitely a kind of a weird feeling, and it doesn't fill me with massive amount of confidence. But a win's a win. I think the biggest concern coming out of this is our mounting injury list. So we'll see how we go next week.
Yeah, understandable. I think there's a lot of good points in that. And look, if we had time, we're obviously going to be busy over Christmas and into January. If we had time, we'd probably do a where are each province at some stage. And like Leinster's, I do think like the Lions hangover is a huge one. And it was always going to be a concern. But also at the same time, you had the fact of like, like some of these guys are just pushing on. And every, longer off season just takes a little bit more out of the legs and things like that. And I think Roy O'Connor is one of the ones who's asked that this week. And I think he made a very good point about like the athleticism and how the game has shifted and how it's a scrum slash aerial contest game. And maybe that doesn't suit, say, a team like Leinster, for example. But we'll come back to you in
Yeah.
a few
Can
minutes.
I just
Or
pick
yeah, go on,
one?
go on.
And there's just because he popped into my head, one player who I think has been such a strong performer for Leinster over the years, and who hasn't been terrible but hasn't been great recently, is Gary Ringrose, where he hasn't been bad, he just hasn't been where he used to be. And I think with some of these players, it is kind of the inverse of the Stuart McCluskey effect, where McCluskey has not played that much for Ireland, so when he comes in, he's almost more fresh than you would expect from someone his age. Gary Ringrose has been playing, and Robbie Henshaw definitely, because I remember this when Chicago has been playing top flight rugby for so long that even though they're younger, they may be physically older.
Yeah.
They've got more miles in their legs, and that does eventually come back to haunt you. So
It's what's
I'd be
been
interested to see.
it's
Yeah,
what's been said about Mo Salah. It's like physically he looks like he's 20 something, but the legs are the legs. Like everyone is the same. The legs are the legs ultimately. And Ben, to kind of move on to the more positive side of Leinster, like there was some good performances in there. Yes, it wasn't perfect. Jordan Larmour, 2 tries in this game, looked a threat throughout. We've always had this with Jordan Larmour, where he'd have fits and spurts. That's kind of been his career, especially in the latter years as Leinster have added to their kind of depth in the back three. But this was an important performance. Now, granted, there is rumours coming around that he may be leaving the province at the end of the season. So you kind of don't want to bring that up now, but obviously it's come up now, unfortunately. But probably the one player that epitomized why Leinster were able to put 45 points on the board.
Yeah, Larmour was excellent. His 2 tries, both taken wonderfully, even aside. Some of his back play, he drifted in an awful lot to almost be an auxiliary centre at times. And we haven't seen him do all that often. Really, genuinely excellent performance, made carries that we don't usually see him make. He took the ball hard into contact. I know he paid the price for the end of the game. I think he's either hamstring or calf injury, which has
Hamstring, yeah.
been Larmour's had false dawns left, right, and centre, unfortunately. But you'd love if he takes his 3 weeks, he comes back. Even if he does move, if he can take even a third of this performance into the really crunch Christmas window Leinster are going to have, the really crunch January, February window Leinster are going to have, and just build and build and build. Because they need competition for James Lowe. They need competition for the wing, and Jordan Larmour with 2 games under his belt is excellent. And
Yeah.
you can't ask for any more from a Leinster winger than in European games, score 2 tries. Unlucky not to get 3, and carried exactly what he wanted him to do. Made up a bit of space for Ioane at times. Yeah, genuinely excellent.
Yeah. And you've linked us perfectly onto the next talking about because Adam, a certain someone did make his Leinster debut, the long awaited one. Rico Ioane was there. Maybe that's why Johnny Sexton was in Ravenhill this weekend. But Rico did make his debut. Probably wasn't on long enough to make much of an impact, but look, it's what we've been waiting for, isn't it?
Yeah, I never knew a player that would have made Johnny Sexton drive out of Dublin quick enough than Rico Ioane. I think a player before that might have been like a Jimmy Gopperth when he went to Racing, you know. But yeah, there's when he came on the pitch, I was sort of like, right, okay, let's sit up, let's watch, let's see what we can do. He's a player that we all would highly rate. We could all say that we highly rate him. But I think that if a signing like that would have been made 3 years before, it would have been like a Jordy Barrett level signing. When he came on the pitch, it was sort of like that expectation. I think David, you mentioned on the group chat that every time he got the ball, there was a sort of like a and then he just passed it and it was like and then there was another point where I messaged the group chat going, Rico's passed and caught the ball very well. But it was one of those games where I think he was just finding his feet. He was getting used to all the back plays. He was passing it a lot as well. There was two tries that were definitely his that he passed the ball onto. I think one of them was Jimmy O'Brien's, where he was there and the line was there, and if he was playing for the All Blacks, he would have dived for that line. But I think he was trying to make friends at Leinster, just pass the ball to Jimmy. But yeah, and also Johnny Sexton's sniper was on the top of the Aviva going, go on, dare ya. But I do think he's going to be, I think he's going to be a very interesting player for Leinster. And I feel like he's going to be there when, as we say, Ringrose and Henshaw are aging and their injury profile as well is not getting any better. I think in that sort of Six Nations time as well, he's going to help that Lions hangover completely, but I don't think he's going to go to the lengths that Jordy Barrett did in terms of big kicks, big performances, and he can single-handedly change a game.
But it is
Yeah.
a little bit terrifying that like one game he has two assists and looks like he
Yeah,
fits in there like a glove
yeah,
already. For a
yeah.
player that we were like, oh, what does he really add to Leinster? Oh no.
He's still Rico Awani though. Like he's one of those
He's
players that we were like,
still
he's Rico Awani. Like I think if Leinster did not sign Jordy Barrett last year, we would be absolutely flipping tables over going Rico Awani is playing in Ireland. But the fact that you're like Jordy Barrett, Rico Awani, and it's like, oh right, okay, next year you're gonna have like Buren Barrett, and it's gonna be like, he was no Rico Awani last year, was he?
It's going to be Jesse Creel just to properly put a bow on it. Just like different type of centre again. But just kind of to use that phrase again, to put a bow on the Leinster chat, David, like a trip to Welford Road on Friday night after they rotated last week is kind of scary from it's scary for most teams. I don't think Leinster should ever really be scared in a game like this. They've proven it enough times. Like they haven't lost a pool game, bar the COVID game against Montpellier. They haven't lost a pool game since 2018, I believe it is now at this stage. So they shouldn't be scared. But at the same time, this isn't easy. This is a sticky one.
Yeah, it was a way to Toulouse. I think it was 24-23
Yeah.
inches in that game. But yeah, no, no, it's a tough game. It's Leicester are a tough team. This is obviously he's gone from there now, but this is Steve Borthwick's old squad, isn't it? And they're not to be trifled with. And yeah, it could be a very physical game. That's been something that's caused us more issues in the past than less. It'll be interesting to see the squad we put out. Like I think I mentioned earlier, our injury lists are going deep, so it could be an interesting one to see. Who we fielding in this? I was calling for it last week and it didn't end up happening, but I wouldn't mind seeing it someone like an Alex Soroka involved. Ryan Baird obviously out long term. I think we favored Jack Conan at six with Max Deegan on the bench, but I think Soroka is such a physical presence and has been doing so much of what Baird is doing so well that I think he's earned it. But yeah, aside from that, it's just going to be a tough one. Like it's definitely not going to be like this Quins game. So, but I don't think that's a bad thing. At the end of the day, when it comes to winning big competitions, you want to be able to win big games. And if an ongoing criticism of Leinster's European campaigns is that the pool stages don't test them enough, I think Leicester should be able to test them, and we should look for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Embrace it. Like there will be players out there, and I'm thinking of like Ollie Chesham, George Martin, Freddie Stewart, guys like that, Joe Hayes. They're the guys who are going to test Leinster. But Leinster should have the 23 to get the job done. And I think that's why when it comes to it, I will probably predict a Leinster win. We'll see the teams uh Thursday. We record this on Tuesday night. But just before we move on to the two defeated provinces, this is not a sign to leave, But just a reminder to subscribe to get all the latest content here on the Global Gameline channel. Or, to subscribe to our other podcasts if you're listening on audio. As we always say, if you can share this with one friend or leave a comment on maybe how the provinces did this week, or I don't know, the fact that Adam is wearing a match-worn jersey this week, because there are jersey spotters in our comment section. It does make a huge difference. Shout out to number 14, Robert Balagoon.
What a man.
I can only imagine, given Robert Balagoon's height, that jersey touches the floor.
It's like a
But
dress.
it actually kind of is, now that we see it. But
No,
we're
no,
going
no,
to
no.
move to
No.
Bridgend, which is something no one has ever said before, as Connacht squandered a 21-point lead and fell 24-21 to the Ospreys. And oh my days, and I wrote about this for All Things Rugby. Why, oh why, was this such a familiar story? I don't know when was the last time Connacht threw away a 20-point lead. It's not that part. The fact they threw away a lead when they were winning this game, they looked so comfortable for such large passages. And like, I watched it here, kind of stayed at home Sunday to make sure I could see it, and it was just one of those where it's like that slow bleed. I think we discussed it about Munster last week, didn't we, Ben? About that slow bleed second half, and it was like, oh, they should be fine. They should still be fine. Oh, they mightn't be fine. And then that last try just felt inevitable. Just felt like it was going to come at some stage, and that was the real frustration, the real kick in the teeth about it. Because like the Ospreys, they're not a bad team, but they've got one world class player. He's out injured. Dewi Lake maybe close to it, but like they've only got maybe one world class player. Connacht have Bundyaki. Yes, they've Mac Hansen out injured, but Keane Prendergast out injured as well. But that team was more than good enough. The first half was excellent, and look, we might get onto it in a minute about how the scrums kind of changed that game and losing the two tight head props, but ultimately this was a game where Connacht just need 4 or 5 guys to just play really, really well. Your Sean Janssens, your, you know, Dennis Buckley's, your Jack Carthy's, your Bundyakis, your Sam Gilbert's, just because I know he's new, but he's fairly experienced. If they all play well, Connacht get the job done. Paul Boyle off the bench, whoever it might be, and that's part of the frustration because this is Challenge Cup. We've seen it with Ulster. Ulster were still ahead at halftime despite not playing well because they just had a couple of guys playing well because it is a level below. And ultimately, the Ospreys just clawed them back. They used the conditions. They looked slightly fresher, I will say, in that second half. They looked like they weren't tiring as much. Probably had a better game plan for the conditions as well. But the scrums are a huge factor. And Ben, I know you're a scrummaging nerd, no more than the rest of us, but especially in these last two games, are going to bring it up a lot. But for Connacht, this did feel like where the game changed. Jack Ainger comes off with an injury, have replaced Finlay Bealham. Jordan Duggan moves over to tight head prop, which he only moves to tight head prop because he's listed in the official team sheet that he can play there. And then they're under pressure. And it even got to the point where they were probably fortunate not to concede a penalty try. And I know it's a big hoo-ha, and we're discussing with the Munster game about scrums and scrum penalties, but they just came under the cosh straight away, and that was almost the moment, that scrum on the 5 meter line where Buckley gets binned, where you're like, oh yeah, Connacht are probably going to lose this game. That was the moment, wasn't it?
And Ospreys were excellent. Full value that second half. Ospreys scrum was fantastic. They saw a hole in Connacht's game and they went for it. I have a little bit of sympathy for Connacht because then you lose Finlay Bealham as early as they did. They then lose Ainger on top of that again. I mean, I know it's a hoo-ha of, we shouldn't give yellow cards for scrums and we shouldn't give penalty flags for scrums. So it's a way to reset the game. But it's also a skill. It's such an important thing to have. Scrummaging is a huge part of the game. Now, World Rugby might make changes for next World Cup. God knows what they're going to do with this little book that I seem to have here for some reason.
But you know what reason it is. We'll get on to that in a couple of minutes.
It'll come up later, I promise. But no, look, the scrum is what killed Connacht in this game, unfortunately. But again, we will, and you mentioned it very briefly, but we'll see this game later in the season. 8 times out of 10, Connacht play Ospreys. I think the 4 of us are probably taking Connacht. We're picking Connacht to win in Bridgend, Connacht to win the sports grounds. 21-0 up, you're expecting Connacht to see that game out really, really easily. I don't really know what the answer is. Yes, the scrum fell apart. Should have been a penalty try. I 100% agree with you on that. There's the debate over the forward pass, ish being a forward pass. TMO had 4 angles. We had 1. Try is good. Try is excellent. Connacht shouldn't be in this position, even with a scrum falling apart and with a couple of injuries. They should have seen this game out. If any other, I know we're going to talk about an Irish province starting badly and finishing not all that great in a few minutes, but there's no excuse for this Connacht team. We've been saying for weeks and weeks that they've been playing really well. They've been grinding out results in Galway. Even when losing, they've played excellently. And then this was the Connacht that we know can happen and we don't like to see happen. But against the team, like Connacht should have beaten Ospreys. It's not rocket science. Yeah. Connacht are a better team, 1-23, even with a third choice tight head prop than Ospreys.
And 21-0 up, and now they get to the point where Connacht really only have 4 tight head props on the roster anyways, with Barrett and Samilo said to step in. But now they take, and like, yes, it is Black Lion this week, and it's Dragons the week after, and they'll get some players back for that Dragons game. But heading into this week, they're without Jack Ainger, Sean Naughton, who was pretty decent in this game as well, it should be said again. Finlay Beelum, Shane Jennings, who I thought had an excellent first half in his season debut. Keane Prendergast, Josh Ioane, Peter Dooley, Byron Ralston, who of course out for the season. Mac Hansen, who now could miss the Six Nations, we're hearing. Oisin Dowling, Temi Lasisi, and Oisin McCormack. Now they got Blade and Hurley Langton coming back in. And I mean this with the greatest respect in the world. You didn't look at that game and say, oh, they missed Keelan Blade. Oh, they missed Seamus Hurley-Langton. It was other areas. It was Mac Hansen. It was the tight head props. I think even the fact that Harry West had to come in for Shane Jennings, and he play out of position again for the second time this season. Jennings was going really well. It's becoming frustrating now, and like they have to get 5 points against Black Lion. Like we always talk about Challenge Cup being off Broadway. This is the definition of off Broadway.
Bad against Montauban. Like they weren't.
They put it up to them for large passages.
Their pack will give a now heavily depleted Connacht pack some issues.
Yeah. You'd imagine Connacht have to go stronger to supplement now is the thing. Like, and that's probably part of the frustration because like you would have wanted to have the 5 points, rotate
you
for
get
this
5 points
game.
from Ospreys, and then you can rotate for Black Lion. Yeah. They now can't. They have to go full pelt. And going full pelt against Black Lion before the Interpros.
Yeah, but they do with Dragons in between. But it's nightmarish, and it's going to be a tricky one for them to navigate as much as anything. But we will round out the show by going to Bath. And if I said no one has ever said let's go to Bridgend, a lot of people have said let's go to Bath because 4,000 Munster fans were there. But by God, were they knocked out cold by Johan van Graan? Like, credit to the man. I know, Ben, you're a huge Johan fan, but you teased it earlier. A start from hell. And even that feels complimentary to hell.
No, it's a start from Limerick Junction and you don't get on a train back to Limerick or Dublin afterwards. I mean, look, it was always going to be difficult pre-game losing Michael Milne and also John Klein. If we're going to further out, just wishes to the Klein family. John is back this week, but I was thinking before of us. Genuinely hope everything is okay with the Kleins. There's some things more important than rugby, even if it is Munster. I think it's nice to mention it at times. But again, you're going into this game, all that aside, with a depleted pack to begin with, against a coach who knows everything about Munster, who built the foundations that this team is focusing on, but is still built on, without Michael Milne, without John Klein, and then 3 minutes in, your captain gives away what is a penalty try, what is a yellow card. Easy assistant referee has to make all game long.
That's probably part of the frustration. It was an easy call. The easy calls weren't made when the game was over. When it's so often the case of, oh, you're 28-0 down, you're going to get the softest call in your favour. Munster didn't seem to get those. The Bath had like 3 times the amount of penalties conceded in this game. 1 yellow card. Munster, first penalty was a yellow card and nothing after. And like
later on in the game as well, we had Batter on a warning. Play continues. Yes. Bath get a penalty, and Tig Burton questions it, and the reply we get is, "Oh, they're now back on a warning." Like, no, they're on a warning 3 phases ago. But again, I don't. Referee is why we lost this game. Munster lost this game through mismanagement for 20 minutes. Some excellent play by Bath, and their kicking game was incredible. Shane Daly and Tucker Abrams will be having nightmares with Joe Cockanasinga for the next couple of weeks. He gathered everything that came their way. It is one of the most complete performances against Munster I have ever seen in the Champions Cup. We had weaknesses. Johan van Graan exploited them expertly. They targeted every single line out we went for. They had a counter jump. Knowing Munster's line out has been not great, to be polite about it. Our scrum had issues the week before. Again, there was one or two calls later in the game that I think we're going to get on to scrum wise that debatable, fine, but Bat were as close to perfect for 40 minutes as you will ever see in this competition. And then the second 40, what did they need to do? Munster came out for the third quarter, looked toothless, went laterally for 9, 10 phases and lost 15 meters each time. There's not an awful lot that I can sit here and say we did well. Edwin Dogbo was excellent.
Yeah, we'll
JJ
get on to him in a
Hanrahan,
bit in particular because he was
excellent.
very good. But like in saying that, you didn't want the situation to be, and apologies to the camera there, you didn't want the situation to be coming out of this game. Credit to Johan, credit to JP Ferreira, credit to Ben Spencer, a man who kind of broke Munster's heart in 2019 when he was unbelievable on that unbelievable Saracens team. And a criminally underrated player. We'll get on to Bath in a couple of minutes, just because of their status. But it was just, I've never seen anything like it. And I know I say this so often, but I've just never seen anything like it because Bath, they didn't play much rugby. Like I
No,
think their 5 tries came off a total of like 7 phases or
Munster had all the
something like
possession,
that.
Munster had all the territory. Bat's point for entry was sky high. They got into the 22, they scored. They got penalties, they went to 22, they scored. It was pitch perfect. If Johan van Graan could have taken his dream performance in Thomond Park, it was this. It was everything he wanted. And like you said it earlier, I'm a huge Johan fan. I think he's one of the best coaches in European rugby. Look what he's done at Bath since he went in. He's won a treble for God's sake. Um, but this was pitch perfect. They got the ball wide. They got the ball. They carried really well. They went wide and they needed to. And they said it was 7, 8 entries and something. Usually a try if it was in the first half out of nearly all of them.
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah, it's remarkable. Really, the first one obviously a penalty try. They had one that came from a free kick. They had a kick in behind that. It was actually just Munster's luck, and I said it. The third try, literally every kick in behind went dead. Bar that one, it stops on the line, and
Sits
like
on the five.
if that could have happened in Brighton for Amy Lee Costigan, fine. But of course, that's not how it works. And we mentioned probably Munster's shining light, and has kind of been a player who has got better without playing until he has come back and has got better with playing as well. Is Edwin Adogbo and David? Like he had the powerful physical performance that we've been crying out for, and in a kind of spell and a month where we've been like, is Joe McCarthy now the most important player to Ireland because of that heft and that size? Edwin Adogbo is reminding people, I'm here as well. You know, if I'm fit in the Six Nations, cap me. You may need me.
Yeah, it's the. I mean, these are the kind of athletes that we complain constantly about not having enough of, and you know, Adagbo has been obviously touted for quite a long time. He's had his issues with injury, seems to always happen, and it's edifying to see him when he gets the chance, really boss it and just seem so at home in that environment and just be able to put his heft around. And it's not even just a like the heft is a huge part, but it's being able to deploy it. There's been players in the past who've been big, strong lads who maybe didn't have quite that much going on between their ears and do stupid things and throw the weight around in a way that isn't helpful. He seems very, very able to throw it around, but in a way that is effective. And I think particularly on hard nights, particularly in places like the Wreck, that's exactly the kind of player you want. So, I think it would have been a hard game for a lot of people in Munster, but I think he's probably one of the few who came out of it a bit better for it. And yeah, as you say, like obviously definitely with Les G would notice a big jump when John McCarthy's back involved. It shows why he, unseated James Ryan, who seemed fairly imperious up until that point, at Ireland level. But Adogbo was cut from the same cloth. Like he's the same kind of muscle, the same kind of um intensity, and obviously it served Munster well, just not quite well enough. It's one man can't win a match all by themselves, but he did everything he was asked to do, and yeah, it was a phenomenal performance. Going the opposite way, like it's obviously the scoreline did not look good for Munster in the end, but yeah, like Ben kind of touched on it, like Bath were efficient more than anything else. Maul tries, pick and goes, and then that was it the third try where they chipped it in the back. They looked like a freak accident of a try. That the ball popped up in the air like there was one Munster player, I don't remember who it was. He was just caught backwards and he just stopped, and I think it was because he was wrecked. But it was like in that moment you've got to look around and go, what was that? How did that suddenly happen? It's genuinely hard to understand how that try was scored, even in the seconds before it happens. So, yeah, it was a tough day out against a very, very, very good Bath team who were just ready to rock. And I think, I don't know if we want to touch now or we're going to touch on it later, but like it was definitely a statement from, whatever about Munster's performance. It was definitely a statement for performance from Bath and a statement of intent. And I think there'll be a lot of big teams like heavy hitters like Toulouse and Bordeaux who usually have their own way, who might be looking at this Bath team and thinking, yeah, we might not have it our way if we show up against them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wrote about it for ATR this week. I was like, the English champions should be dining at the top table. Like they just should. And like Saints were that. Bath looked that way as well. The only thing I will say, Adam, if they're going to be contenders, they're going to need to fill a Will Stewart sized hole because his injury is the only thing that you could have against them now as they look
Yeah,
into the next couple of weeks.
uh, that that injury looked rough from the get-go. Like I feel like that pack works so well together, and Will Stewart is one of those highlights in that pack. I feel like that injury was so unfortunate for him. Like I do feel like he's a really good player. He's a really good tight head. He's going to be a massive miss for England in the Six Nations as well, because he is that force in the tight head pack. But to speak on Bath in general, I don't think I've seen a nine performance as dominant from Ben Spencer as I did. This is going to be my Jim number one since Albie Matherson tore us apart against Munster a couple of years ago. But it seemed like everything that Ben Spencer did worked well, and it got to the point where he played that well that it kept on cutting to Finn Russell, and I'm like, oh yeah. Finn Russell's playing, but that's how good Ben Spencer was. It was almost like, oh, Munster are going to typically target Finn Russell, who we're going to use now. And I have to say, the performance from Quinn Rue as well in those lineouts at the very start, Quinn Rue and Charlie Els. I'm not going to compliment them a lot, but to like give Bath their credit, they were very, very, very good. And I do agree with David in terms of that it's a statement that they want to go on in this tournament, and it's a statement that we all need to really take notice of. But with Will Stewart going off early, it's how they're going to fill that gap.
Yeah, no, definitely, completely agree. And I just want to weigh in there while we're on the Will Stewart topic because Munster's scrum came under an awful lot of pressure in this first half. I thought Michael Alatoa came on and did well in the second half. He's always been a good scrummager. David, I'm sure, could tell us about that from his time at Leinster. But I suppose the one thing that I will say, or two things I will say, is one, very happy with how Jeremy Luckman went against Thomas Toy. I actually think that that was a really good matchup for Toy. Usually, someone who's slightly smaller than him, it could just outmuscle him, but Luckman did a really good job against him. For the say 20 minutes or so before in the second half before he got replaced. But there was one moment in this game, and Ben, I know you have the law book there if you want to go flick through it. Law was it 19-37C about lifting a player?
1937 CE.
Yeah, like you're not allowed to lift a player into the air. It's happened to Munster twice. Seemingly they're going through the formal channels about going through this. Just before we move on to Gloucester and Cork, it is like we can talk about scrums as a set piece and as a sideshow or whatever way you see them, but they do have to be safe,
That one
and
in
that's
particular,
not
because Bat
safe.
shared it on their socials.
Mm.
And you
And
literally
the,
have
and the
Ryan
actual
standing.
EPCR.
They
Yeah.
shared that exact one. We're like, and look, Munster under pressure for 65 minutes in the scrum. Michael Alatoa came on and dominated, and he was excellent when he came in. Really, really excellent scrum porn, I know, but he was so good. But like that one scrum, there wasn't a push through, it was just a lift up of the opposite prop, which is minimum a reset. Ireland benefited from it for one of the scrums against South Africa, where they weren't scrummaging against Porter, they just drove him into the sky. And it was given as a reset. A lot of Ireland, that should have been a penalty. We had the same thing on Saturday. It isn't a bat illegal or anything like that. It's something that isn't currently being enforced. And none of the four of us have played front row, I don't think. But
No,
if
definitely not.
If that's the level that we're now refereeing something that is quite dangerous in general, it has to be a higher level. It just does. We can't have props going vertical and a reward being given to the prop that's doing it.
Yeah.
Across the board. It's not a Munster or anything like that. It's just, it has to be refereed better.
Definitely. We're a little bit tight for time, so we might do a little bit more on Munster and Cork next week, hopefully with a bit more positives on that. But we're just going to run through the quick fixtures really quickly and get brief thoughts. As we said, Leicester Tigers host Leinster Friday, 8 p.m. on Premier Sports 1. David, if I give you 4 points, or like 4-1 on the log, Leinster by less than 7, would you take it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll take any win these days.
They lose 3 games and it's all over. It's
puts
so
manners
over.
puts manners on you real fast.
Softens the cough, which there's a lot of people with a bad cough at the moment. So that should also be said. Munster in Páirc Uí Chaoimh against Gloucester, 5:30 on Saturday on Premier Sports 1. Ben, Munster should win this. They will be favourites to win this, but they need a performance.
Need a performance, it has to be 5 points. It's non-negotiable. It's a home European game. It has to be 5 points. If we perform anything like we did last week, I will be on here next Tuesday. A very, very angry man.
No one can save you then. We unfortunately have 2 8 p.m. games on Saturday night, which is going to make it hard, not just for us, because 2 of us are going to be in Cork, but just for Irish fans in general. Connacht against Black Lion is listed as being on Premier Sports 1 at the time of recording at 8 p.m. Have to imagine Connacht will win that and get the full 5 points. In fairness to Connacht, similarly to Leinster, they don't lose a lot of home European games in the Challenge Cup. Like in recent years, it's very rare their team goes there, be it URC top 14 or the Premiership team. I understand Black Lion are not from any of those 3 leagues. They are too DC. But you have to imagine Connacht will get the win here and pick up those 5 points they need, because even just last week, the fact that they didn't get a 4th try, even if they left with 2, would have been something. But that is part of the frustration. And then arguably the game of the week, if both sides play to form, is Cardiff against Ulster, 8 p.m. Saturday night. It's on Premier Sports Rugby. As it stands, that could get changed. But Adam, this is a must win for Ulster in a different type of way, because if they back it up here, they've got a home game and a game in Amsterdam against the Cheetahs to hopefully book in home run.
It's for me as an Ulster fan, this game is like quite frightening me. It's frightening me because of how well Cardiff are playing, but I'm sure Cardiff are saying the same thing about us. It's sort of like the hipster choice. But yes, we have to win. Like there's no doubt about it. Going into Stade Francais, in Belfast, Stade Francais, we need to beat them as well. I feel like every game now needs to be a win. There's no excuse for the losses at the minute. I feel like we're going to have a little bit of a rotated squad, but I'd much rather rotate for the Interpros and be in the position that we are in the URC and go full lather for the Challenge Cup.
Interesting. Well, we shall see how it goes. We should be back next week, hopefully same time, same place to look back on all the action from round 2. Before we hop off, I do want to just carry on from something Ben said, and to Jean Klein and all his family, that they are in our thoughts at this time. But thank you to Adam, to Ben, and to David for joining me. And until next time, take it easy.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.